by Awesemo.com. Welcome. Glad to have you with us. I'm Dave Lochran. That's Adam Shar. Laffy without an E is what they call me. They don't say Laffy without an E. You just don't spell it with an E. I don't know
Thanks
why
for the
anyone would
clarification.
think that. Well, hey, some people need it. I can assure you of that. Oh, man. Anyway, glad everyone's here. We already got some people in the room. Got 5 games to talk about. We had an earlier game in London. I didn't catch any of it. Couldn't even tell you the score. It's probably still happening right now. The interesting thing to me was more so that Enes Kanter couldn't play because, Erdogan is trying to track him down and kill him apparently, and he really doesn't like Erdogan, and apparently Erdogan doesn't like him. Do you know who Erdogan is?
The president or something of Turkey.
My man. Yeah, that whole story is really wild.
Yeah, I think my favorite part of kind of not really closely following it, but somewhat following it was he started getting into it with Edo Turkoglu, the former NBA player who I guess is on the opposite political side of Kanter.
Is that right? I didn't see that.
Oh, yeah. Turkoglu basically said, like, this is all bullshit. Kanter's making stuff up. And Kanter started calling him Erdogan's puppet. And, they went back and forth on Twitter.
Yo, I mean, I vividly remember Hedo Turkoglu. Vividly remember him. Played a bunch of years with Orlando. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, apparently does not share political views with Enes Kanter.
Is it a coincidence that...
Go ahead,
Josh.
I want to tag you with the best part of this Twitter feud. So apparently Turkoglu was putting out like a bunch of tweets in different languages, like very pro-Turkey, pro this guy. And one of Kanter's bits in this was that like he knows that he's just a puppet for him because one of the tweets was in German and he doesn't even speak German.
Oh my God. Oh, that's great. Is it a coincidence that, Turkey and Turkoglu, like, is that something to do? Like, because you don't see many Ameristeins in our country, right? Like Turkoglu, or is that just coincidence that the country he lives in is the first 4 letters of the country and his last name?
Do they even call their country Turkey?
I mean, what else would they call it?
I don't know. I feel like there's a different name for
it. Maybe. I don't know.
Turkey just seems kind of like anglicized.
But people around the world that don't speak English, don't call America something else, the United States.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Turkey's had like a bunch of different names, like probably within Turkoglu's lifetime.
Very possible. So I Googled, what is Turkey called in Turkey? And the response, Turkey, which has no native turkeys, does not call Turkey Turkey. The Turks knew oh my God. Yeah, that's not going to help me. Maybe someone in chat can help us out with this absolutely ridiculously stupid conversation that now I'm curious of. But anyway, let's get into it. We've got 5 games to talk about. Indy, Philadelphia, 7 o'clock. We got 2 7 p.m. starts, a 7:30, a 9 p.m., and a 9:30, all Eastern time starts. So we got the Pacers hosting Philly. You have Embiid questionable. The line hasn't moved really, by the way, so no real assurance whether or not he's in or out based on the line. 3.5-point favorites at home, 224.5 total here. You've got Victor Oladipo, who's dropped to 7,600 on DraftKings. The cheapest, it feels like the cheapest we've seen him all damn year. And then 8K flat on FanDuel. Let's start with him because we will get into guys like Booker who are also in this price range, and a bunch of players that you could argue are just as underpriced as Oladipo. But let's start with him first against this Philly team.
Yeah, I mean, part of me wants to just say he's dead to me after scoring like 25 fantasy points against Phoenix at a similar price
tag. He burned you bad the other day.
Yeah. But, at the same time, you can't treat DFS like that. And the price tag has dropped to a point where even if we consider all the things wrong with Oladipo, he's playing a few less minutes per game than he was earlier in the year. His usage has dropped from 31.5% to 26%. His per minute production has dropped from 1.2 to 1.05 points per minute. You're still getting to a point where he's probably a little bit too cheap, especially facing a Philadelphia team that ranks 4th in pace over the last month, that has been just giving it up to ball dominant guards all season long. I think that the price tag's still at a point with Oladipo where you have to, consider it pretty strongly. I think it's a good play, all risks included. The price tag, I think, just dropped far enough.
I'm with you here. He faced Philly earlier this season, got up 30 plus shots in one of those games. It's funny though, if you look at the games where Oladipo shoots a lot, I think that's 20 plus times, the Pacers have lost most of them. Josh and I talked about it today, how crazy it is that, this basketball team is 3rd in the East, continues to win games. They're 8-2 over the last 10. And Oladipo has been virtually invisible for a lot of these. I mean, they are playing well in spite of Oladipo, not because he's back. Now, granted, he plays solid defense. He's still a decent facilitator. He contributes outside of scoring, but it's not what you would expect. Which brings me to the next point is we've got the rest of this Pacers team, and they've been tough to gauge, to evaluate, to really do anything with all season long. You kind of just mix them in and out of lineups, but you've got your Collisons, your Corey Josephs, your Bogdanovich, your Thad Young, Miles Turner. I think Sabonis is a bit pricey now that Turner's back, and I don't expect to see more than 26 or so minutes in a competitive game. But the supporting cast on this Pacers team, if you even want to call it that anymore with the way Oladipo has been playing, let's talk about him.
I think Miles Turner is really interesting here, especially in tournaments. I'm sure there's going to be, a tendency to kind of underproject him here because he played, 26 or 27 minutes in his first game back. He missed a couple games with injury, but before the injury, he was playing 30, 32 minutes a night. He was playing really well. And in the first half of that game against Phoenix, he played 16 minutes. He didn't play in the fourth quarter because the game was a blowout. I think you can get 30 to 32 minutes from Turner here. He's underpriced. He's 6,700 on DraftKings, 71 on FanDuel. I don't have our ownership projections in front of me, but I would assume that in that price range, you see Steven Adams pick up more ownership than Miles Turner. And while Adams has the higher floor, I think Turner has the higher ceiling here in what is either going to be a scary, but what has not been a bad matchup against Joel Embiid, or a matchup against Amir Johnson and Mike Muscala that, I would just be very, very excited about. So I really think that he's a good tournament pivot off of Adams if he's going to come at lower ownership. Beyond him, it's guys that have kind of seen their price tags come up and that I think are priced correctly in Collison, Bogdanovich, Thad Young. There's still some value in those guys because of this appealing matchup, but Turner and Oladipo are the two that seem to be really underpriced for me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't really have any differing opinions there. The only thing I would say is that if Embiid plays, unlike you, I actually think this matchup is a lot worse for Miles Turner. And it's not to say that it's untouchable, because this has been, no question, a Philly team that at times has given it up to centers. But, you've seen that change a little bit. And they're, like, from a rebounding standpoint, they've done a good job of limiting rebounds. And a lot of that obviously comes just from the fact that you have a very good rebounding guard in Ben Simmons as well. We see the same thing in Oklahoma City with Westbrook. So it's not that I don't like him. And I actually like him more than Adams, because you know how I feel about Adams. Right now, above 7K, it just doesn't do it for me, where I think his ceiling is severely limited. I don't mind Turner. But if Embiid is out, Turner becomes a top play for me. So that's where I just want to – that's, Adam, where I want to draw the difference, because I think it's important. I think Turner's fine. But if Embiid is out at that price tag, 6,700, Turner becomes a really, really good play.
Yeah, and to clarify what I said, I agree with you. I think if Embiid's in, Turner is just like purely a tournament guy where he has a higher ceiling than Steven Adams, or at least a comparable ceiling at probably lower ownership. But it scares me. And, Embiid obviously is a very good defender. If Embiid's out, I would be comfortable playing Turner in any format.
No question. And another thing, we talk about this a lot. We don't predict blowouts, number one, but I don't like predicting foul trouble either. I'll obviously say, hey, Jaren Jackson's probably going to foul out, but that's not really predicting foul trouble. That's just, what is it? What is it?
Stating the obvious.
What is that? No. What did I say? Death in Texas, right?
Yeah.
Something in this, and Jaren Jackson foul trouble.
Yeah, death taxes and Jaren Jackson foul trouble.
Death taxes and Jaren Jackson foul trouble. There you go. Yeah. pretty much. But there's no denying that if Embiid is out, Miles Turner's chances of getting into foul trouble decline significantly.
Right. Yeah, it becomes a safer matchup in that regard. It becomes a better matchup just in that, despite some big games to centers this year, Embiid is an excellent defender. Muscala and Amir Johnson, not so much. It just becomes better all around if Embiid's out.
Right. And I don't really think that it's any surprise that in two meetings this season with the Philadelphia 76ers, foul trouble has been an issue for Miles Turner, right? 5 personal fouls the last time, 4 in the one before that. And I believe he actually got into foul trouble in both of them. Played only 17 minutes the last time they played. And I know from watching that game that a bunch of it was from Embiid. Let's talk about the other side of this. You've got the Sixers. Now, Joel Embiid is questionable. So is Wilson Chandler. We'll get to that last. Well, you know what? No, let's base it off of 2 scenarios. I think that makes the most sense. Let's first say Joel Embiid plays. So Joel Embiid plays and Wilson Chandler, I don't really care about. If you think it's a significant difference, that's fine. But I mean, I guess you'd probably get some decent minutes from Jonah Bolden, but that's a lot different than when Bolden's getting additional run because Embiid is out, and a difference than when Chandler is out. Where one, he's actually getting minutes at the 5 and getting opportunities. But let's say Embiid plays, Adam, and we'll start with the Ben Simmons.
Right. So Simmons' price tag, I think, is very different depending on sites. He's up to, I think, 10,700 on FanDuel. I really don't want any part of that. You obviously have Westbrook that you can pay up for at that position. It's a huge pace down spot against a good Indiana defense. You don't get the bonuses on FanDuel. You lose more points for turnovers. 9,200 on DraftKings, though, is still certainly in play for me if Embiid's in, and very, very appealing if Embiid's out. I expect you get 36, 37 minutes out of Simmons even if Embiid's in. Over the last month, you have a 22.5% usage rate, a 16.5% rebounding percentage, 37% assist percentage, just playing really, really well. I think the price tag on DraftKings in particular is a little cheap. But we'll also say there's a lot of players on this slate.
Right, exactly what I was kind of talking about with Oladipo, and we're not even a full game in. That's how I feel as well. But man, Ben Simmons has played really well recently. And I just love the fact that he has been significantly more aggressive and willing to take shots that aren't all at the basket, but he's getting to the basket. And he's rebounding like a madman. If Embiid is out, though, you have Jimmy Butler on DraftKings at 6,800. Now he's 81 on FanDuel. He's more expensive than Oladipo. His price point has made no sense recently. It really hasn't. But on DraftKings, I think he actually is priced pretty reasonably, 6,800, given his performance when everyone's healthy. Jimmy Butler at 6,800. If Embiid sits, to me, even in a difficult matchup against a quality Pacers defense, that is a price that I'm very much willing to take.
Yeah, no question. And I think that even though he's been pretty disappointing the last 2 times Embiid sat, one was in that massive blowout at Portland. The other one, I don't remember who he faced, but he had a good but not great game. You still just kind of have to trust the numbers that he's put up since coming over. And he's just seen a huge spike in usage. He's become much more productive when he's not playing with Embiid, which makes sense because you're just putting the ball in his hands more and allowing him to do everything. So I think that even if Embiid's in on DraftKings, Butler's a perfectly fine play at 6,800. On FanDuel, I don't really see the need to get there and pay more money than we are for Booker or Oladipo. But if Embiid's out, he becomes yet another, just very, very strong play that it's hard to get away from on this slate.
Right. And that Portland game was a massive blowout. I mean, they played like what? He played 26 minutes, shot 2 for, which is a terrible, terrible game. I don't really care. At 6,800, I will 100% be on board if Embiid is out. And a $9,200 Simmons, if Embiid is out, makes him significantly underpriced as well. But on FanDuel, let me just ask you, if Embiid sits, Simmons is 10,700 and Butler is 8,100. Is that enough to push either of them over the top? Given that Oladipo and Booker and a bunch of other guys are also reasonably priced?
Yeah, I mean, so on this slate, even if Embiid's out, I don't think I end up with like 100% Butler, whereas I I had 90 to 100% both of the last times Embiid sat. The presence of Oladipo and Booker, in addition to all the Toronto guys, would probably keep me lower than that, but it would still end up like I'd have him ahead of Booker. I'd have Butler ahead of Oladipo.
All right. Yeah, and that's probably what I would do as well. All right. Anything else for Philly here? I mean, if you want to break the scenario down a little bit with Embiid sitting, what we could be looking at.
So, I mean, if Embiid and Chandler both sit, then it should open the door for Muscala to be a value play. There's already plenty of value on this slate, so I'm not going to say like the best value play or a great value play, but you would get minutes from Muscala. You would also get minutes from Jonah Bolden, but I think you'd also see Korkmaz pick up some extra run. So I wouldn't be really excited about either of those guys in this matchup. They would certainly be guys that if you're playing 150 lineups, you can rotate in, but I would have Toronto value ahead of them still.
All right. Yeah. The problem again with well, no. Let me rephrase or correct earlier. If Embiid and Chandler are both out, I would expect Jonah Bolden to get a good amount of run, like a pretty substantial amount of minutes here. Last time we saw this situation was on what game? What game was it that Embiid? It was Atlanta, right? Embiid and Amir Johnson were out, I think.
Yeah, Embiid and Johnson were out. Chandler was in.
Yeah. That's got to be the wrong one. He played really. The Dallas game I'm seeing, he had 30 I can't remember which. Maybe that was it. Where
Dallas, he played like 30 minutes.
Yeah, but who was out? Because
Chandler.
He started that.
Chandler.
Was it just Chandler?
I think Chandler and Redick, I think.
Okay. Either way, he's shown that it's possible that he can get extra run. And Amir Johnson was out that game too.
Okay.
So, all right. Never mind.
Yeah, so that's why like I expect that he would start if Chandler's out, but the reason that I'm a little, I guess, like I'm hesitant to project him for 30 minutes was that Redick was in that game, Butler was out. So it was Butler and Chandler out that game. But you had Korkmaz.
Oh, right.
Yes, you had Korkmaz start and play 28 minutes against this Indiana team. I think that Korkmaz can pick up extra minutes as well, whether it's Ben Simmons playing more time at the 4 or Korkmaz sliding down. I don't think that Bolden needs to play as many minutes as he did in that game.
Yeah, they were. Yeah. All right. That makes all of them unappealing then. Okay. Sacramento and Charlotte. This game's kind of interesting. You've got the Charlotte Hornets, 2.5-point home favorites, 229 total here against the Kings. Clearly a pace up team that this looks good for Charlotte, but it's different because you have guys like Jeremy Lamb, 5,700, and then Marvin Williams. Talking about just DraftKings pricing for now. We can get over to FanDuel. Lamb on FanDuel is 59. Marvin Williams is 55. He's 48 on DraftKings, and then Kemba is 92 on FanDuel. On DraftKings, you're getting Kemba also, or at 87. But then we get guys like Bismack Biyombo as well, who's played 22 plus minutes in 3 straight games and gets a matchup against the Sacramento team that allows more rebounds to opposing centers than any team in basketball. Well, here we go. Let's talk about it, man. We'll start with the backcourt and work our way up to old Bismack.
So Kemba, I like here. Obviously we've talked the last couple of games about him struggling recently. And I think we can attribute some of that to Cody Zeller because Zeller is good in the pick and roll and we know Kemba lives there, but also he's just been shooting really, really poorly over that stretch. So I don't want to attribute an entire, like 0.2 of a fantasy point per minute decrease in production to Cody Zeller being out. I still think that Kemba has a monster ceiling here in a really fast-paced game. The Kings ranked 4th in pace over the last month. And I think it's just a good spot for him. There's obviously a ton of upside. You should get around 36 minutes as long as this game's competitive. If you can't or don't want to get all the way up to Westbrook at point guard, I think you get clear, 50-plus fantasy point upside from Kemba here. I really like him a lot. Expect that I'll have more Kemba tonight than I have in a while.
I very much think that Kemba is a good play, and why wouldn't you? Now, we'll get it. let me ask you this, because if we're just, if I'm just telling you I like this guy, you're just saying I like this guy, it doesn't really do much without context. I think you would agree.
Right.
So right now, take DraftKings for example. And the reason I say this is because it becomes more difficult when you have the point guard, shooting guard eligibility here. So we've got, and I won't include Westbrook, we'll get to him. You've got Ben Simmons, with or without Embiid. You can feel free to clarify that in a minute. Kemba Walker. You got Devin Booker, 7,800. You got Oladipo, 7,600. All of them point guard eligible. 3 of them have eligibility at two different positions. Where do you rank Kemba among these 4 guards?
If Embiid's in, I have Kemba ahead of Simmons. I have him ahead of Oladipo. I have him ahead of Booker. If Embiid's out, Simmons would end up, I think, ahead of Kemba on DraftKings, where there's only the $500 price difference. But I have Kemba projected for like 48 DraftKings points in my tournament projections compared to like 41 apiece for Booker and Oladipo.
Right. Okay, that's exactly where I would put it. There's no question Simmons would leapfrog him on DraftKings, but the $1,500 difference on FanDuel still makes it pretty damn difficult. What are we doing with the wings here? I'll throw Marvin Williams into the mix. Obviously not a wing, but you get the point. Non-centers and point guards. What are you doing with like a Jeremy Lamb and a Marvin Williams?
On a lot of slates, I think those guys would be really, really appealing because they are a little underpriced for this matchup against Sacramento. It's obviously an appealing spot, but more secondary plays for me on this one in particular, because there's just so many guys that we can go to as value or in that, $4,000 to $6,000 range. So it's, less of a priority. I think that Williams probably plays around 32 minutes. I have him picking up around 8 minutes at center, which is, obviously appealing. And the price tag on DraftKings, where you can also roster him at small forward, is nice, but, not a priority. Jeremy Lamb, kind of the same thing. I like this matchup for him in that Sacramento's not a good rebounding team. And we know that Lamb's ceiling games tend to come when he combines some sort of peripheral with his scoring. In this case, I would expect it to be rebounding. But again, it's just that, he's a shooting guard and you have so many other good shooting guard plays that it's not really a priority.
I think you make a good point, though. On other slates, they could be great, but with a spot like this, I will actually use just point per dollar or the value they give you at those salaries isn't nearly as valuable as someone that's, $1,000 or $2,000 cheaper than them, expected to play the same amount of minutes in a equally good matchup. We're talking about Toronto against Phoenix.
Right.
So yeah, it makes it tough. Bismack Biyombo, 22 plus minutes in 3 straight. We have recently seen Mahone and Gomez with his minutes declining. He got the first crack at it when Cody Zeller went down and, played more than 20 minutes once, and really now is kind of back to a 13, 14 minute per game role. Meanwhile, you got guys like Frank Kaminsky, getting your 8 minutes once in a while, some more than that, but not a whole lot. I mean, right. Bismack Biyombo is getting an opportunity to see, I won't say the majority of center minutes, but more minutes than any of the other centers.
Yeah, and this is a slate too where there's not as much opportunity cost at the position. Obviously you have Jokic and Embiid at the top, but the mid-range just isn't as deep as it is on most slates. So paying down for Biyombo in a lot of roster constructions isn't really that unappealing. This is also a matchup against Sacramento. You mentioned it earlier, where they're one of the most favorable matchups for opposing bigs, but also Sacramento plays big. They're going to have Cauley Stein out there for around 30 minutes. They're going to have Harry Giles out there for the other 18. So you can project Biyombo for that 25 to 26 minutes as opposed to like 21 or 22. And it just makes him a, pretty decent point per dollar value play that opens up some stuff for you. So, I like him. It's not someone that I expect to go out there and score 40 points or anything, but I just think that this is about as appealing a spot as you're going to get for Biyombo.
Me too. And I said it this morning too. The fast pace should not hurt him. He's not like, I think a lot of people picture him as this big traditional center. He's not. He's 6'9". He's really not that big. He's capable of moving. He's not exactly, the greatest athlete. I'm not saying that, but he's also not Andre Drummond out there either. So I have no concerns with Bismack Biyombo at all. You hope that he gets to the higher range of his minutes, but if he doesn't, I think he can still be valuable. On the other side, though, it's a Sacramento team that for most of the season was really, really nicely priced. And then we started to see the prices climb. Then they come back down. They've definitely ranged high and low throughout the past month or so. De'Aaron Fox, the issue here with me is it seems like the high range of his minutes right now is up around 31 or 32, where it used to be 36 to 38. And now we're seeing Yogi Ferrell actually stick in the rotation. What does that do for you? Because with me, those extra, 5 to potentially 6, 7 minutes that he's not seeing in these competitive games, if that continues, that does a lot to take some shine off of De'Aaron Fox now that he's above 8K.
Yeah, no question. This is the Kings in general are an example of a team that you see throughout, an NBA DFS season where they deal with some injuries. They have some good players that are productive on a permanent basis, and you frequently go to those guys pretty much every single slate, and then the team gets healthier as the prices rise and they become much less appealing all at once. That's the case here with Fox. He's in a price range where, on DraftKings, he's more expensive than Oladipo and Booker. And that's to not even mention, Fred VanVleet as obvious point guard value. On FanDuel, he's in the same price range as Kemba. So it gets really, really difficult when his minutes, he's playing, 31, 32 minutes. Like you said, Farrell's stuck in the rotation. He's a productive player. It's just that you really have to project him for 2 to 4 minutes less than a lot of these other guys around him. And that's really the same thing for guys like Buddy Hield. It's the same thing for, pretty much everyone on this team right now as they get healthier, and Dave Yeager does not seem intent on just cutting people out of the rotation. He seems like he would rather just take minutes from the young guys that shouldn't be having minutes taken from them.
Yeah, pretty much, right? I don't think it's entirely devoid of value here. I mean, Harry Giles has been seeing 17, 19. He's at 23, 16, 17. He's getting the minutes. He's dirt cheap. It's not unrealistic to think that on a 5-gamer, maybe he could do something for you. But with the news that we've gotten throughout the day, that becomes less attractive. Bogdanovic is affordable, but with Iman Shumpert back in the rotation, he's not going to see the upside of 36 minutes that we had, hoped for before. Outside of De'Aaron Fox, how do you view the rest of this Kings team?
Hey guys, just popping in quick. Kyle Lowry now questionable.
Of course he is.
Sorry,
that
felt relevant.
Awesome.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
I don't even know what to make of that. A few site dependent plays from Sacramento. Bogdanovic at 5,500 on DraftKings, even projected for 30 minutes, comes in as a nice play for me. Willie Cauley-Stein probably doesn't play more than 30 minutes, but it is a matchup against Charlotte. I think it's fine. And then Harry Giles, you mentioned, I don't really have interest on DraftKings with the other value that's out there, but on FanDuel, where he's a $3,600 power forward that you can just drop in his bad games, I think it's appealing because he is over a point per minute player. He should get around 18 minutes here going against someone like Willie Hernan-Gomez for most of them. He can absolutely just go nuts over those 18 minutes.
Right. And that's kind of where I'm willing to draw the line. I don't really see myself going elsewhere. Is there anyone else on this Kings team that you have interested in, the Buddy Hields or anyone we haven't talked about?
Not as someone that, outside of maybe, ending up in like 5% of my 150 lineups or something like that. I'm sure I'll get some Marvin Bagley on DraftKings, but it's not, if you're playing a couple of lineups, I wouldn't be like recommending you put him in.
Right. All right. You want to move on to the next one?
Not anymore, but yeah.
Yeah, what a mess. What a mess. Toronto at home against Phoenix. I mean, this happened before where he was out, then questionable, and then he played. So with Kyle Lowry out, it was pretty obvious. Let's just, because we don't know. Now I'm getting the impression that he's going to play. Why would he be out and then questionable unless
and it wasn't
a really
an injury.
Good chance that it's rest.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like before when like he was playing against DeRozan and suddenly he was upgraded to questionable because I'm sure he was just losing his mind trying to get on the floor.
Right. So just let's do a quick breakdown of what it looks like if Lowry does sit.
So if Lowry does sit, you end up with this team having either 9 or 10 healthy bodies, depending on CJ Miles. And even if he plays, I'm counting him as like half a healthy body. So you would end up with this team being very shorthanded. You would end up with Van Vliet obviously starting for Lowry, but most likely also Norman Powell joining the starting lineup. And it would be a different situation for him than he's had this year. He started 2 games, but both games were alongside Lowry, where he's just not really going to do much. So it would open up, I think 34 to 36 minutes for Fred VanVleet in a great spot here. Playing without any of Lowry, Leonard, or DeRozan since last season, VanVleet's right around a point per minute, slightly higher producer. He has a 22.5% usage rate, 30% assist percentage this season without Lowry or Kawhi on the floor. So it would just be a phenomenal spot for Fred VanVleet. It would open the door for DeLon Wright to play 26 to 28 minutes as a perfectly fine value option. Norman Powell, again, I think would play north of 30 minutes if Lowry is out, and he would end up being a very good point per dollar value option. And then you would have, Siakam and Ibaka, who I think are phenomenal plays regardless, but it would just make them even a little bit more appealing not having Lowry out there.
Oh, what a shit show. Well, at least it shouldn't change the front court all that much. I really don't think so. Now, if Lowry does play, let me go back for a second. Let me backpedal and ask you this. It's only I have to now. So if Lowry plays, then you've got Ben Simmons, you've got Kemba Walker, you've got Devin Booker, who we'll get to in a moment. You've got Victor Oladipo, and then you have Kyle Lowry, who is $7,400 on DraftKings. He is $8,000 on FanDuel, and as we know, Adam, this has been a pretty obvious spot where on the season, Kyle Lowry has been crushed from a usage standpoint, from a point production standpoint, by Kawhi Leonard being on the floor. I mean, way worse than DeMar DeRozan ever could have done. So it's not just that it takes Fred VanVleet out of play. It means that we have to at least talk about Kyle Lowry, who is going, who has and very much has the possibility or the opportunity to put up really solid numbers at a low 7K price point with Leonard off the floor.
Yeah, I think Lowry would become an obvious, very, very good play, especially when you factor in that him being ruled out and, earlier in the day, like it's just going to keep his ownership down lower than it would be if he'd been in all day. And yeah, he'll clearly be underpriced in a great spot against Phoenix. He's averaged 1.29 DraftKings points per minute without Kawhi on the floor this season, has a 23.5% usage rate and a 40% assist percentage compared to, with Kawhi on the floor where he's sitting somewhere around 17.5% usage and an assist percentage down near, I think, like 28 or 30%. So it's just a huge difference. It's a great spot. He would end up being, I'd have him ahead of Booker. I'd have him ahead of Oladipo. I'd have him ahead of Kemba. He would be a huge priority for me.
Yeah, he definitely would. So we'll hear from Nick Nurse soon, and then maybe we'll get some information there. Let's hope. That would be nice. But yeah, I mean, things changed. Lowry's got it's funny, he's played 302 minutes with Leonard and Valanciunas off the floor this year. 22% usage rate, 1.33 fantasy points per minute. But he's got an assist rate up around 38%. I mean, it's just such a better spot. The front court, talking about the Raptors front court, I think Serge Ibaka is a pretty solid option as well. I know they're playing their second of a back-to-back, but I mean, against the Phoenix front court and a guy in DeAndre Ayton who is showing improvements but has been ravaged by opposing bigs all year long, Ibaka to me is a quality option. And we've got to talk about Pascal Siakam too. What do you make of the front court for Toronto here, where also Siakam 6,700 on FanDuel. He's 300 cheaper than he is on DraftKings, and Ibaka's 100 cheaper, power forward eligible on FanDuel, and 6,500 on DraftKings.
Yeah, I love both of these guys with or without Lowry. Ibaka, without Kawhi on the floor this year, has averaged like 1.33 DraftKings points per minute. If you put Lowry on the floor, it actually jumps to 1.45. But he has almost a 29% usage rate either way. 17 to 18% rebounding percentage is obviously a phenomenal spot for him. The one thing about Ibaka is that I don't think he plays. There's no reason to expect him to play bigger minutes than normal here. I think he plays 30 to 32. His direct backup, Greg Monroe, is healthy, and there's nothing injury-wise that affects Ibaka directly. Whereas Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby's out, Kawhi Leonard's out, CJ Miles may or may not be out. You're running really thin at this position, and I think that you're going to see 34 to 36 minutes from him. He's obviously been very good this season. He's over a fantasy point per minute guy in the spot, so I like him quite a bit as well. I would prefer Ibaka if I have to choose one of the two, but I plan on having tons of both with or without Kyle Lowry.
Me too. And those FanDuel prices are also very, very appealing. But I'm not opposed to them on either site. And as you pointed out, whether or not Lowry plays is not unimportant, but if anything, it'll just free up some more easy buckets for guys like Ibaka and Siakam because he's a better passer than Van Vliet. We'll see, though. We'll see what we get here.
I got one more thing to add from Toronto.
Yeah, please.
Greg Monroe is not crazy in tournaments. It has nothing to do with who he's playing, but other than that, it's a great matchup. Like, he should play 18 minutes here if the game's competitive. He can pick up a couple of more if something weird happens, whether it be foul trouble or Ibaka not playing his full run or whatever. But Monroe's like 3,500 on DraftKings. You have Biyombo up over 4K. Biyombo's not a super high upside guy, whereas Monroe's greater than a fantasy point per minute and should just go absolutely nuts for every minute he's out there. He'll obviously have much lower ownership because he's the backup center for Toronto. So I don't mind him at all in tournament lineups.
Can you roster both of them in the same lineup, asks Dave.
Ibaka and Monroe, or Ibaka and Siakam?
Sorry, Siakam and Ibaka.
Yes, they play different positions.
Yes, they do. What about Monroe and Ibaka?
No, they do not play different positions.
They do not. But sometimes it might not. It doesn't matter. Well, how many minutes are you expecting from Monroe?
18.
18. All right. Well, I'm saying if you're expecting 18, does it really affect Ibaka?
Well, I guess from a ceiling standpoint.
From a ceiling standpoint,
like does. Monroe's not going to score probably not going to score 40 fantasy points in 18 minutes. But if he somehow, I don't know, if Ibaka gets 3 fouls or something, and then Monroe can play 26 minutes and you would just win something.
Yeah, it's still not favorable. Honestly, I'm not huge on playing 2 front court starters together in the same lineup in tournaments. It's not to say I won't, but I do think there's some cannibalizing of the peripheral stats there from a rebounding standpoint. But
I agree with you there. The reason I'm okay with it with these two in particular is that, for one, it's just such an appealing matchup in terms of the rebounds. For two, Siakam contributes in other ways, be it scoring or assists. And for 3, I think Siakam plays a ton of minutes here because they just don't have bodies.
Yeah, fair points. What about for Phoenix? We got to start with Devin Booker because of this price point.
Yeah, the price point's really appealing. I'm not concerned that he only played 26 or 27 minutes last game. For one, it was his first game back from injury. For 2, they got their asses beat by Indiana. We've seen him play 36 minutes in each of his first 2 games back from injury at previous times this year. So I have no issue projecting him in that 34, 35, 36-minute range here against Toronto. The price tag's really appealing. Obviously, Toronto is good defensively no matter who's on the floor, but not having Kawhi and not having OG shouldn't do anything but help Booker. Those are 2 really long guys that can make life really miserable, and neither's going to be playing. So at least some kind of probably slight uptick in productivity for Booker here. It's still, still a scary spot, but I think the price tag's cheap enough. I would put him behind Oladipo in cash games. In tournaments, I would just rather play whoever's lowest owned.
All right. Do you have anything else that you're interested in with this Phoenix team?
Not really. DeAndre Ayton's cheap enough. He gives you a ceiling, but I think Adams has the higher floor. I think that Willie Cauley-Stein and Miles Turner are very similar in terms of upside. So, nothing that's a priority for me.
What about Ibaka or Ayton? $100 separated on DraftKings.
Ibaka.
Yeah, me too. Which is kind of where that's what I mean, where the context is really important.
Right.
Because Ayton might look like a decent play on its face, but there are a lot of guys around them that you'd rather play. And I think that's pretty much how I feel with the entirety of this Phoenix team, even Devin Booker to a large extent.
Yep. One thing that I will point out, just from a strategy standpoint on the 5-game slate, is this is very similar to last night's Houston and Brooklyn game, where all the obvious value was from Houston, and then you had James Harden as the top play. Those guys were all popular, but you didn't have a lot of ownership on Brooklyn guys on the other side.
Kyle Lowry's playing.
Okay, that makes it easier at least.
Yeah.
So you're going to see a ton of ownership on the Toronto side. Nothing you can do about it. But because these Phoenix guys are not, clear priority plays, they're going to be lower owned, and it gives you a chance to get, as a whole, a low owned game stack, and then hope that it shoots out or goes to overtime or something, and you can kind of just separate from the field in that way.
Right. For what it's worth, CJ Miles also playing. All right, let's talk about Denver. Yeah, let's talk about Denver and Chicago. The Chicago Bulls, 13.5-point dogs in Denver, 213 total. Two bottom teams in terms of pace this season, have been all year long. Not really much has changed since Boylan came around. I don't expect much to change with Wendell Carter out of the lineup either. Bobby Portis practiced with the starters today. I think we have a pretty good idea whether he will be mega chalk. He is a quality per minute producer. Josh and I had a discussion earlier on the show, or earlier this morning on the strategy show, about what type of minutes we were projecting him for. For anyone that watched the strategy show, you got our opinion. I'll recap mine after Adam goes, but since he hasn't given his yet, outside of the deep dive, which I'm sure you gave it there, what do you see this center rotation looking like between Portis, Lopez, and Felicio?
I have Portis at 28 minutes because they said, 2 or 3 games ago, that's what he could play. He hasn't played it in part.
They said it twice in a row. Two games in a row they said that, which I found that very interesting as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so he hasn't played it, but it's been like there was a blowout. There was Jabari Parker coming out of God knows where to rejoin the rotation. There were things that happened, but if he's cleared to play 28 minutes, I think that's what he should be projected for here. Like whether he starts or not.
Why even mention 28? Why even mention 28 minutes twice in 2 games if there isn't some idea of possibly getting that much minutes somewhere down the road?
Yeah, exactly. And now you have, I don't even know, like I have Lopez projected for like 12 minutes. I don't have Felicio projected to play at all. I think you could see Lauri Markkanen get time at the 5 here, and then Parker play more minutes. So I think that Portis is the clear, whether they spot start Robin Lopez or not. I think Portis is the clear gets as many minutes as they're going to let him play at center here.
Okay, yeah, I'm giving Portis 28. I am giving Felicio a few minutes here. I think it's reasonable to give. I mean, he played like 3 minutes against the Lakers, 9 minutes against Golden State blowout, which is why he got some of that blowout run. 5 against Portland, 3 against Brooklyn. I'm giving him 5 minutes here.
He's just been playing like the last few minutes of games when they get their asses beat, though.
Well, no,
not
a lot
to say
of those games.
here, yeah,
right. Which it should, but even not projecting for blowouts, with no Wendell Carter, I think he's going to sneak in for a minute or two when there's weird rotations. You see it quite a bit. I give 3 to 5 minutes. It's really unimportant because if he doesn't get it, it would probably just go to Lopez where he gets a few extra minutes. So, and it's not earth shattering whatsoever. I do have Bobby Portis at 28 minutes. He will be chalk. There is no question there. I saw someone in chat say, are people really all over Bobby Portis against Denver? Well, he's a pretty good per minute guy, and he's also pretty inexpensive. So, yeah, there's blowout concerns. Yeah, we haven't seen him play those many minutes, but it's not like Bobby Portis is a player that won't shoot, that can't rebound, that can't pick up peripherals. This isn't a chalk Gary Clark or a chalk Austin Rivers, who outside of hopefully racking up a few points from beyond the arc does absolutely nothing else. Bobby Portis can actually pick up stats in a hurry when it's needed. So he's a good per minute guy.
Yeah, he's the example of a guy who's much better for DFS teams than for his actual team. So when he gets an opportunity to play, and he's underpriced, you should definitely be interested.
All right.
So how many minutes do you have for Jabari Parker?
Let me see. What do you have, Matt?
22.
I looked this up. I have him exactly 22. Yep.
Okay.
So I have Jabari at 22. I have hold on, I don't have much time. I have Jabari at 22. I have Portis at 28. Uh, and then well, here's where it's different. What do you have Lopez at?
12.
You have him at 12?
Yeah.
Oh, then I don't know where we're different. It's got to be somewhere.
How many do you have Selden at?
10.
Okay, I'm at 14.
Okay, well, there's your difference. Okay. Do you think Parker's in play?
On DraftKings, yes. On FanDuel, I don't see the reason to do it. He's 4,900 on FanDuel. I just don't see it. But 3,600 on DraftKings, as long as he's not going to be really popular, which with all the other value, I doubt that he will be, then I'm fine taking some shots there in tournaments. I mean, if this game blows out, he could see more minutes. If he plays well, maybe he sees more minutes. If Lopez doesn't play at all, Parker sees more minutes. Like, there's ways for us to be under projecting him here. And coming off the bench, he should still see plenty of usage. So, I think 3,600 on DraftKings, it's not something I'd go to in cash games, but I do think there's at least some upside.
There is. I mean, it's super sketchy, but so is Harry Giles.
Right. Like, I'd rather play Parker than Giles on DraftKings. I would absolutely rather play Giles than Parker on FanDuel.
Yes, correct. And the simple reason, yeah. And Parker, even though he's only a few $100s cheaper, he's still cheaper. How much Lowry are you going to have now that we just had a question? I figure we'd answer this now that he's active. I love how they say available to play, by the way.
Right.
Like, is he going to play or is he available to play?
Right. And it always scares me.
Sometimes
there's like once or twice a season where it comes out right after tip, like, oh, he's dressed because they needed a body.
Exactly. Now, fortunately, we just got the starting lineup as I said that, and he's starting. But you know what I'm talking about. That can be
it happens once or twice every single season.
Yep.
Yeah, so as far as an exact percentage, like, I don't know. I haven't run my lineups, but I'll say a lot. Like, he's clearly underpriced here. His ownership, no matter what it is, I think it's safe to say that whatever Kyle Lowry ends up being owned at, it would have been higher had the news been different today. So he's going to be lower owned than he should be. Not that he's going to be low owned, but lower than he should be. So yeah, I mean, I don't see how I don't end up with Lowry as one of my highest owned guys.
There's something psychological about it where a guy is originally out and you've got all these value plays that you want to play. And then when he's ruled in, you don't immediately go to, oh, well, he actually makes for a really good option now. You go to, oh, well, these guys are no longer really good options.
Right.
You see, it's very weird how that works. But I know it's something about it where it's like, it's easy almost just to forget that this guy actually is in a really good spot,
right?
Especially with Leonard out.
And then
you
also have people that immediately like just argue against why he's still not a good play. Like, I guarantee if you went through our chat and other chats of shows going on right now, you would have at least one or two people saying how like, oh, well, he's going to be limited because it's a back-to-back, and they wanted to rest him or something like that. Like, people are going to come up with reasons not to play him.
Right. Oh yeah, no question. I mean, if you wanted to rest him, you would have rested him. He wouldn't have played originally. So I don't know. By the way, I appreciate everyone hitting me, with updates and stuff, but keep in mind, we're on a delay. So I'm seeing the news as it comes out and saying it as it comes out, but it's not hitting you guys until like 8 or 10 seconds later. So I'm seeing it all. You don't have to, waste your precious time filling me in, even though, look, I appreciate it, but I'm seeing it in. I'm seeing it as it comes through. We wouldn't let the news go by without filling guys in that aren't paying attention to that on their own.
Is the starting lineup Lowry, Van Vliet, Green, Siakam, Ibaka?
The starting lineup is Lowry, Van Vliet, Green, Siakam, and Ibaka. Yes.
Okay.
Anything else for Chicago? Man, Chris Dunn, what a disaster that was the other night. I had some really good teams and I had a good amount of Dunn, and he was just trash.
Yeah. I had some really bad teams and a good amount of Dunn, so it wasn't as frustrating. No, I mean, whatever Dunn I get to is fine. I'd rather go to the cheaper guys here, obviously, but Dunn, it's just an unappealing game. Both these teams play slow. Dunn has said that he's kind of lost in this offense, as I think everyone is. So the rates are really nice for Dunn. He certainly has upside. He's certainly underpriced for his ceiling. It's just that there's still a lot of risk on him as well.
Jay Good says, so Lowry likely first guy pulled or playing fewer minutes, correct, Adam?
No.
It was literally the thing you just pointed out. Exactly what you just said.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll assume he's not watching the show. All right. Any other interest in Chicago before we move to Denver?
No.
Any interest in Denver?
Jokic.
Yeah, he's always in play. The rest of this team is just, especially with Barton back, with Gary Harris questionable, it's kind of a tough team to do anything with right now, right? Like Murray, if he's not scoring, is probably letting you down. Jokic leads the whole team in usage, rebounding rate, and assist rate. Like everybody else kind of needs something to break their way or a good price point to be priorities. Jokic has just kind of taken this team over in total and made almost all of them, I won't say irrelevant, but really tough to play on most nights.
Yeah, they're another example like Sacramento of a team where we had a ton of value and now they're getting healthy. And I don't even know, like it's really hard to even project these rotations right now because they have so many bodies, especially if Harris comes back. I did see he went through his normal pregame routine. I don't know what the hell that means or if it means he's going to play, but
Right.
yeah, so I don't think like Harris is in play one way or the other. You know, Beasley would be okay if Harris sits out, but he's up to almost 5K. It's really just the Jokic for me. I don't think guys coming back negatively affects him in terms of what he does on the floor. I think maybe you see more games where he plays 32 minutes again than like 36, but he should be able to just go absolutely nuts against the Chicago team anyway. So I don't really care. Give me Jokic. Everyone else is secondary to me.
That's kind of how I feel. I don't want to just like skip over this, but that's kind of the analysis here. All right. Last game. Let's do it. OKC and the LA Lakers. Our boy Josh Engelman going to take you up to lock, by the way, on live before lock, up to 7:00. He'll be coming on directly after us. Wilson Chandler will play. Let's get some Joel. Tell me we're going to get Wilson Chandler news here and not immediate Joel Embiid news. Wouldn't that be something special? Wouldn't that be something? I'll let you know when we get it, or I'll wait for someone to tell me. Okay. So you got the Lakers, you got OKC. And by the way, if you've yet to check us out at awesomemode.com, all the content we have to offer outside of our YouTube videos, here's a way to get 50% off your first month. And it's very simple. You go to the homepage, you click join now, you select your plan, whichever one you'd like. You fill out your information. It takes like 10 seconds if you're relatively intelligent. You click have a coupon, click the coupon, deeper dive. It's in the bottom right corner of this page, all one word, deeper dive. And then check out, you get 50% off your first month. NBA ownership projections for all of our sports, the lineup builder, which is very cool, Fantasy Cruncher add-on if you'd like it. Awesemo, Alex Baker himself, his site, his rankings, his projections, all of our NBA, PGA, MLB content when it happens. You know it. We've got it all at awesomemode.com. Deeper Dive is the promo code. Use that when you click join now on the homepage. It is only one word. Be sure of that. And hopefully we'll see you there. 50% off your first month at awesomemode.com. OKC, LA Lakers, 227 total. Thunder, 10.5-point favorites. I say it every single time the Lakers are on the slate, but it's important to reiterate. Worst offense, top 3 defense, top pace since LeBron went down. So they've been good defensively, but the pace means that it's kind of less relevant than it would have been if this was, say, the Utah Jazz or the Memphis Grizzlies. Let's start with Russell Westbrook here and the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah, so obviously really appealing spot in terms of pace. Tough matchup, like you said, defensively. Lonzo is an individual defender, also not the greatest individual matchup, but it's not like it really matters for Westbrook. What I think does matter more is just the layout of this slate as far as, because again, like you were saying earlier, you have to contextualize things. Russell Westbrook, every single person that plays DFS knows is a good play, but the point guard position super deep now that you have Lowry there. So it comes down to like, do you want to pay up for Westbrook at point guard or do you want to pay up for Paul George at small forward or Jokic at center? To me, I love Westbrook, but the opportunity cost of paying up is greater at point guard than those other positions. And for that reason, again, I haven't made my lineups, but I imagine I'll end up with a little bit less Westbrook than I would otherwise, just because of the depth of those positions. Nothing against Westbrook, though. I mean, point and a half per minute guy, should play 36 to 38 minutes as long as the Lakers hang in here. Tons of possessions, tons of rebounding, phenomenal spot.
Yeah, it is. I love it. And I mentioned, we talked about it on Wednesday or yesterday or Tuesday. The drives per game we're seeing recently are huge for Westbrook. And I love that because I want to see him take more shots around the rim, because when he does, he always makes them because he's a monster. With Steven Adams, I'm not really all that interested, to be honest with you. I get it. I see why people would like him. It's a good matchup. Lakers struggle to defend opposing centers, but I'm just not really enthusiastic about his ceiling. And I can get a similar floor and ceiling, I think, at a $700 discount with 1, 2, 3 different centers. So not huge on that. We could talk about Paul George, and if you want to weigh in on Adams, I'm open to that as well.
Yeah, so I like Adams in cash games. I don't mind them in tournaments. It's just that I assume he's going to have higher ownership than I would like in tournaments. I think it's a good spot in that it's a Lakers team that plays fast, so you have more possessions, and they're inefficient, so you should be able to get plenty of rebounding opportunities. The problem, of course, as you always mention, is that Russell Westbrook's going to triple-double hunt, and he's going to take rebounds from Steven Adams. It's just going to happen, and that kind of caps the upside, in addition to the fact that he's clearly, third or fourth fiddle on this offense. So he's a really high floor guy for me with a more questionable ceiling. Paul George I love, though, because you have a guy who's averaging 1.35 fantasy points per minute, going to play very similar minutes to Westbrook, somewhere in that 36 to 38 minute range, and he's at a much weaker position than point guard at a cheaper price tag as well. So really, really like Paul George here. He's the guy from this team that I think I'll probably end up with the most exposure to on DraftKings and on FanDuel.
Okay. I like it. Anybody else for OKC? We'll close it out with the final team after this.
Jeremy Grant's whatever, Dennis Schroeder's whatever, but not priorities. Like I would go George, Westbrook, Gap, Adams, Gap, those other guys.
Right. Yeah, that seems pretty logical here. On the other side, you have the Lakers. I really haven't been that excited about them recently, but you know what? Hold on, what are we getting here? Trainer's case thumbs up. Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. This is appreciate that, boys. See, that's good info right there. Trainer just gave thumbs up after working on Joel Embiid. Looks like he can go. Also, Wilson Chandler will play tonight. Let me make sure this person is not some buffoon.
I was going to say, that's how we've been getting information on Embiid on these questionable days, is there'll be game time decision, and then someone will post a picture of him studying on an iPad or getting a back massage before the game when he has a knee issue, and it's right. Okay, he's playing.
All right. This guy follows me. That's interesting, but 1,700 followers. Is he a... I don't see anything that would say he's a...
Is he affiliated with the team, or does he have courtside tickets tonight?
That's yeah, I'm not seeing any affiliation there. So yeah. Rabashua says Lakers are allowing the 5th most points per minute in the league the last 21 days. Exactly. You're not talking about possession.
That's why pace matters.
That's exactly why literally the exact reason why I said the defensive rating is less important, because the pace. Defensive rating takes into account the pace. It takes into account possessions, not pace. So it takes all of the team's points allowed per 100 possessions. The Lakers, over that 100 possession span, over a span of 100 possessions, have a top defense over that span. That's what I'm saying. But because they're playing at a top pace, points per minute is going to be elevated because there are more possessions per minute. That's a pretty good explanation, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's why when we talk about it, we'll mention how the defense is as far as efficiency goes, but also talk about pace. Sometimes people are why do they talk about pace so much? That's why, because more possessions, the efficiency matters less.
Exactly. And they are playing at the second fastest pace since the 26th of December. Oklahoma playing at the fastest pace over that span. So you can close it out here. I think Lonzo Ball at 6,400 is still a very solid play against an up-tempo Thunder team that plays good defense, but still is going to give up some points. And then, of course, Ingram and Kuzma are also pretty cheap here.
Yeah, I think this team is really just underpriced. Lonzo much different between FanDuel and DraftKings. I think he's obviously a better play on DraftKings, but Ingram, I think, is a really good play on either site. Should play 37, 38 minutes here as long as it's competitive. He's averaging about 0.95 fantasy points per minute since LeBron's injury, and that should go up as a result of how fast this game should be played. Kyle Kuzma, really the same thing. Only played 30 minutes last game, didn't close, but there's no reason to expect that to be the norm. I expect him to play around 36 minutes here. He'll see plenty of Paul George and Jeremy Grant, which is not good for his efficiency, but more possessions makes it less important. And he is just underpriced at 73 on FanDuel and 69 on DraftKings. So Kuzma and Ingram are the two priorities for me from the Lakers. Lonzo, I'm sure I'll get some on DraftKings. I'll get much less on FanDuel. Tyson Chandler, I think I'd probably actually rather play Greg Monroe because there's more of a ceiling, but Tyson Chandler should probably play around 26, 27 minutes. So, or 25, 26 minutes. So he's whatever is upon. If you get there, he's fine.
All right. That'll do it.
KCP is okay. Also not my favorite value play, but should play 30 to 32 minutes.
Yeah. And his ownership, as Josh pointed out this morning, should come down now a bit since we got all that news. But no, actually less so now that Van Vliet doesn't have the crazy ownership that he's going to see. And then in terms of ownership projections on awesemo.com, we just got that question. They should be updated any minute now. Keep an eye out for that. We'll get a new, fresh, updated ownerships. Good luck tonight. Stick around. Josh Engelman coming up live before lock right after this. Good luck tonight, fellas. And remember, before you head out, if you enjoy our content, you want to see more, please hit us with a thumbs up, like the video. It helps us out greatly. Subscribe, hit the notification bell so you always know when we're coming out with new content. And we'll see you back here tomorrow on the Deeper Dive.
Good stuff. Here we go.
Have fun.
Yeah.
Dude,